Okay, thanks. Well, thanks everyone for coming for this very important announcement today in relation to a significant investment in mental health here in New South Wales. I'm joined today by the Mental Health Minister, Bronnie Taylor, the Treasurer, Matt Kean, local member for Parramatta, Jeff Lee, as well as the Mental Health Commissioner, Catherine Lourey. We also have Dr. Angelo Vigona from the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists, Ms. Rochelle Hadici, who is the Acting and Clinical Operation Manager at Headspace Parramatta, and also Liana Farabi, who will speak as well, who also does valuable work with Headspace, supporting many young people right across New South Wales. So today is a very important day, but yesterday was very important as well. Yesterday we hit, as you know, our 80% double dose vaccination rate here in New South Wales, and I want to thank every single person right across New South Wales for the effort that they have made in going out and getting vaccinated. That effort has ensured that we've been able to open up safely. Tomorrow will be another day where restrictions are being lifted right across New South Wales, and that could only have happened not because of the government, but because of the great support, the great efforts that people have made right across our state. So I want to thank everybody for the work that they've done, the efforts they've made, the sacrifices they've made, and that's ensured that globally, not just nationally, New South Wales has led the way in this space, and very much it is the people of New South Wales that are leading our nation out of this pandemic. Today's announcement in relation to mental health support is very, very significant. It's a $130 million investment, and in many ways, mental health is the untold story of this pandemic. Yes, we focused on the economy, we focused on the health side of things, but for many people, this has been a very difficult time, particularly young people who haven't been able to go to school. Many young people right across the board, but also people who have struggled with their businesses closing, being out of work, and we need to make sure as a state we continue to invest record amounts in providing that support for people who need it. So this investment today, which Bronnie Taylor will speak more about, will provide more services, more beds, more counsellors, will ensure more appointments right across the state to give people who need help, who need assistance, that extra bit of support. But I also want to say today, in relation to this significant investment, the government can only do so much. The government can put a significant amount of investment in, but really we need people right across the state to look after each other, to reach out to those people who you know are going through a tough time, to encourage them to seek help if they need it. We can provide the funding and the services, but we need everybody to come together and look after each other. We know that there's going to be a difficult journey ahead for our state. There will be challenges that come our way, but if we continue to do what we've done in the past, and look after each other, look out for each other, that will get every single person through it. We don't want anyone to slip through the cracks. We want to provide the funding, which the Treasurer has allocated as part of this significant announcement. But ultimately that will only go so far. We need everybody right across our state to continue to look out for each other, to look after each other, and we will get through this difficult time. Also want to make a quick note in relation to schools opening. It's a great day tomorrow. Kindergarten, Year 1 and Year 12 students return to classrooms. And now I know that many kids are excited, many parents are excited, but I know there are also parents and children who are nervous. We believe that the measures we have in place will ensure that we can open up our classrooms safely. We know that there'll be challenges along the way. We accept that, but it's incredibly, incredibly important that we get kids back into the classroom as quickly as possible. So tomorrow we have 3 years going back, and the following week all kids will be back in the classroom. I want to thank the teachers, particularly across our state. We have 90% of teachers who have now been vaccinated. That's incredibly, incredibly helpful, because that's ensured that we can get our classrooms open, our kids back to school as quickly as possible. So I say to parents, please have confidence that the measures we have in place will keep kids safe and and teachers safe in the classroom. It's a very important day tomorrow. We need our kids to get back into learning as quickly as possible. We know it's great for them, it's great for parents, and I believe that the work that the Minister has done, Sarah Mitchell, has been outstanding, but I particularly want to thank the parents and the teachers who have made the effort to go out to get vaccinated, because that's ensured that we can open up tomorrow our classrooms safely. I'm now going to pass to Bronnie Taylor, Minister Taylor, who will talk about the importance of this investment. The Treasurer will then say a few words in relation to this being an important part of our COVID recovery, and then we'll have some of our mental health counsellors and advisors here today who will also make some comments. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Premier, and I very much appreciate you all being here. This is a really, really big day for mental health in New South Wales, and as the Minister for Mental Health, I couldn't be prouder. And that's because what we're doing, as the Premier said, is we're investing in community. This announcement starts with the community. We are going to train up to 275,000 people to be able to go out there and have conversations about mental health. That conversation that they have will then inspire and encourage other conversations. And there we have this growing web of support that's going to exist in our communities. Can I start off by saying a very big, enormous thank you to the Premier, because every single time as my 2.5 years as the Minister for Mental Health in this state, I have gone to him and I have said, we have an issue. I need investment. This is why I need to do it. He grilled me. He made sure I knew what I was talking about, but we've come to the party with the funding. Now, I don't like to often talk about dollars because I like to talk about people. But the investment that's happened in New South Wales in the last 2.5 years is bigger than any investment we've ever had. We have now school nurses. We are one of the first states to have specialist youth and adolescent mental health teams. Now, we are the first state in Australia to embark on the training of over 275,000 people trained in suicide prevention and mental health first aid. This is a game changer. And I would like to thank him very much, because we are putting families and we are putting community at the centre of New South Wales. So we talk about that. We also know that our services have been under pressure during this time. We've been very transparent as a government in saying that we have seen an increase in self-harm and we have seen an extra strain on our young people. But we're telling you that because it's important to be transparent and it's important to have those conversations. But what's really important is to make sure then that we've got the strategies and the services to meet that demand and meet that need. And that's exactly what's happening today. We are partnering, we are going to Headspace, and we are trying something innovative, something new about sending master's students into these organisations to make sure that we reduce that waiting list. And if we can reduce that waiting list at Headspace, that's going to have a cumulative ongoing effect onto all of our other mental health services. That means more people helped. That means more people seen. But ultimately, what that means is better health outcomes for our community in mental health, because we absolutely know that our physical health is important, but so is our mental health. When we look at things like perinatal anxiety, we have seen an increase in that as well, because having a baby is a really wonderful thing. But it's a challenging time, and it's a really particularly challenging time in a pandemic. So we have seen increased waiting lists for our perinatal and anxiety services. Well, we're going to smash that waiting list with this investment with the Gidget Foundation, and we're going to make sure that you have the right service at the right time and in the right place, so that you can be the best parent that you can be and you can enjoy your new family. So I say to everybody out there, this announcement today, it is significant, but it is absolutely about people, and it's about community. And it's about making sure that we have the investment now in the strategies that we need to make sure that we have that support for years and decades to come. I can assure all of you here today that this didn't come out of a brain bubble from Bronnie Taylor, the Minister. This comes out of serious consultation. This comes out of listening to people like Dr. Vagona, who's here today, who, gives me a bit of a time about what I need to do and what I should do, but I'm grateful for that. because I was a nurse for 20 years before I came into this job, and I know that we have to absolutely make sure that we have that clinical output and the clinical input to make sure that the decisions that we make are reflective of what's needed on the ground. And that's what this announcement is about today. This is about people, and this is about community, and this has happened because we care, but because we know that we need to make this investment to make sure that we can all be the absolute best that we can be. As you can tell, I'm pretty thrilled about it. This follows a $70 million investment earlier on with COVID, plus over $2.3 billion invested in the mental health system. Yes, that's record investment, but it's the results that it's going to get that matters. Thanks very much.
We know that this pandemic has taken a huge toll on people's mental health, particularly here in Western Sydney. And let me be very clear, this package will save lives. It will also help us confront the crisis of suicide. Every year, we will lose more people to suicide than would be killed on our roads. In fact, 8 Australians every day will take their own life. If 8 Australians were drowning at our beaches every day, it would be a national outrage. This package will tackle that front on. We need to confront the crisis of suicide, and that's exactly what this initiative is all about. It will see one of the biggest injections in our mental health and suicide prevention in our state's history. In fact, it will see New South Wales lead the way in tackling the scourge of suicide across our nation. Every life matters, and we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to support those that are doing it very tough, particularly at this time during the pandemic. This is a nation-leading initiative that will tackle the crisis of suicide and support those who most need it. I think in addition to that, I just want to make a comment that we're also spending $86 million to support our arts, music and cultural sectors. We want to see our arts sector get back on their feet and get people back to doing what they love, going and seeing a movie, enjoying the theatre or seeing one of their favourite bands live in person.
Thank you, Premier and Ministers. My name's Angelo Bagona. I'm the Chair of the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists New South Wales branch. I represent 1,800 psychiatrists and trainee psychiatrists in this state, and it's a privilege for me to represent our professional group at this really historic announcement today. This is an extraordinary package of services that's being announced today to deal with extraordinary times. We've had a pandemic which has touched everybody. There's none of us here present have been untouched by the pandemic. And when you imagine the impacts that it has on those that are more fragile, and particularly our young people, and particularly those that are already struggling with mental health problems, you'll appreciate that never before has investment in mental health care been more necessary. Youth have really suffered, and we've seen the data. The Minister referred to it. We've had increased presentations to our emergency departments of people in crisis with deliberate self-harm. We've had increased in hospitalisation rates. We've had increase in complexity of psychiatric disorder with people who do get admitted to hospital. This data has been available through New South Wales Health, but it's also anecdotal data coming through to me from our membership. And it was those sorts of communications resulted in us moving to the Minister and developing suites of packages that you're seeing today. We are proud to be associated with this today, and I think when Minister Taylor talks about people that need thanking, well, Minister Taylor needs thanking. People will say that we need a Royal Commission in the mental health services in New South Wales. Well, they had one in Victoria, but we didn't need a Royal Commission because we have Bronnie Taylor. And she's been an extraordinary advocate for mental health service delivery and enhancement. She's been approachable, as she indicated. She listens, she actions a plan, and she takes it to Treasury, and she manages to get it funded. So it's been a terrific experience working with her over the last couple of years, and we're very grateful to the Premier for listening to her, for funding these services. We're very grateful to Minister Kean, the new Treasurer, because he's going to be funding more services in the next budget. And we see this really as a first tranche, or the first or second tranches, if you like. We've had Safeguards, which is the child and adolescent program, which is rolling out across the nation, across the state, over the course of the next 4 years, and that'll be starting up next year. But this development into the youth service space is really significant. Youth goes up to the age of 25, and so young people in those later school and university and trade years have really needed assistance at this time. We're seeing increasing call-outs to Headspace sites, to access lines, mental health access lines and helplines, and so the need is obviously there, and they've been particularly hard hit by this. So the investment in this youth strategy is really significant. It is an unusual investment for a state government. These are federally funded services, Headspaces, but the state government decided that they needed to act fast and move into this realm very quickly if we were going to deal with the increased demand and the waiting lists that young people are experiencing in trying to access care. Everybody's busy in private practice. I'm in private practice, I'm busy, my books are full. Private psychologists are in the same boat. Where do you find a workforce that's going to be able to respond in a quick way to this emergency? And so we developed this package around increasing or turbocharging, if you like, Headspace, and we think it's going to be a winner. We're going to have very highly skilled clinical psychology master students who are going to be assisted as well by other allied health professionals. They're going to be well supervised in that setting. And we know from the literature, from the medical evidence, that a well-trained, smart, well-supervised trainee delivers as good and sophisticated quality of care as a crusty old clinician like myself. So people are going to get high-quality services, and in addition to that, we're going to be having psychiatrists moving into paid to move into Headspace centres as well. And this is a critical investment in Headspace because it increases the capacity of Headspace to deal with more complex presentations. So young people who've traditionally, for a lot of Headspace sites, haven't been able to get the sort of care that they've needed there, are going to be able to get it now because we're going to be able to deliver more comprehensive and sophisticated services. It's a great investment. The challenge will be when this money runs out in 18 months' time, who's going to pick up the pieces? And so we'll be hounding this government, and as well as the federal government, around what's going to happen with the funding for these services. Because once it's put in place, it's not going to go away, and we're going to need further enhancements. And I'm going to sort of promise the Minister and the Treasurer and the Premier that we'll keep hounding them in this way, and not only for these services for youth and child and adolescent, but across the age spectrum, because we need continued investment in community mental health services in this state to bring us up to speed. So I'd like to thank, as I've thanked the politicians, I want to thank Jason Trethowan at Headspace, who's been a fantastic partner in this development. We also want to thank the university sector, the heads of schools and the deans who've embraced this idea really well. And we're really looking forward to this being a very effective new intervention in youth mental health service delivery. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Catherine, the Mental Health Commissioner of New South Wales, and I'm really thrilled to be here today. Thrilled because the Premier and the Minister have acknowledged the clear impact that mental health has had from the pandemic and the associated restrictions upon their life, upon their living, upon their day-to-day experiences. As Commissioner, I travel around New South Wales and I speak to hundreds of people who've lived with mental health issues. They have struggled more in this last 18 months than they have prior to COVID. We know we've got a community that has experienced the impacts upon their mental health on the tail of going through the horrendous bushfire season, followed by floods and more recently a mouse plague. We have a community that is rich and will come together to support each other. But when I hear and listen to people, they say, we need services now that are connected across levels, that are easy to navigate and find our way through to services when we need them, in the time that we need them. And this is what this package will be providing. The breadth and the depth of experience across New South Wales is varied, whether you're in regional New South Wales, rural, or the Sydney metropolitan area. And what we need to understand is about how we can go in and support communities in the way that they need. And I really look forward to how communities will be able to embrace and contribute to how these services will be rolled out. We know that young people have been more disconnected during COVID. We know that there are more presentations to our emergency departments for suicidal thinking, for eating disorders and mental distress. We know that people are going to their GPs. We know that small businesses are also experiencing the impact of mental health upon themselves and upon their workforce. So this is the time to step in, because the one thing that we also know is that the impacts will be felt over lifetimes and over the coming years. So getting in early, supporting our families and our children in their early years, helping young people transition into a wonderful and flourishing future, to have supports for people who are all experiencing mental health issues and doing it tough, to know that there's an opportunity, that there is hope. And I think the message here today is really about hope. It's about listening. We've listened to communities, the government, and you can hear this is a collective effort. And we know one thing for sure, that reform and change and improving our community is all about collective effort. And this is why the Commission is really pleased to be here today. Because last year, 12 months ago, we gave the Minister for Mental Health, Living Well in Focus, a 5-year strategy to improve mental health. And what we found was 3 main areas: to build community resilience, to invest strategically, and to build the workforce for the future. And this initiative ticks every single box. That initiative was informed by over 3,000 voices that we heard. I visited over 60 communities across New South Wales. This is what the people of New South Wales have said that they want, and I'm thrilled to be here today to hear with you to see how we're going to invest in the state. For me, the other important thing is we can invest in the economic wealth of our community, but importantly today, we're investing in the mental wealth of our community. Thank you.
Hello, I guess I'm speaking from the perspective of a young person, and today I guess I'm just very excited to finally speak to my peers and have this package have funding. In lockdown, there's times where you're spiraling and you're reaching out, and it has been really hard. As a young person, there's so much uncertainty and you don't know what's happening next. And then this has been more with the pandemic, with exchanges or unis and schools being changed. And so it's been really great to know that there's more hope and there's more funding and there's more time that's going to be put into it to help all our peers and ultimately our futures. I think the prevention that this is going to have is not going to be measurable, because we're not going to know what we stopped and those bad days that didn't come later on. And so I guess I'm really excited to know that that's there, and to like have this hope that's going to be there forward for the future, and yeah, to be excited. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, Perrotte, we might start just with some COVID-related numbers and freedoms, and we get back to the package if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Obviously hitting the milestone a couple of days early, can we expect any more freedoms that haven't yet been announced?
Look, we've got a very clear roadmap, and obviously from time to time we make changes to that, but what's most important from a government's perspective is that we provide as much certainty as possible. You know, from time to time there's obviously different views. When we hit the 70% mark, there were different views about bringing it forward, but one of the things that we've worked very closely here from a government's perspective, and Treasurer Kean will continue to do that work, is engagement with businesses, because the more certainty we can provide, the greater confidence that will flow, and that's what this is all about. This is a confidence game. That's got us through last year. It made our economy stronger. Once we got through the difficult challenges of the pandemic, we recovered all the jobs, and we're going to do it again. It's going to be harder, but if we all work together, and I think over the last week there's been a lot of hope and optimism. Catherine spoke about hope. Hope is incredibly important here, and there's a bright summer ahead as we open up our state. We're doing it in a safe way, but if there needs to be changes to the roadmap from time to time, we will make those changes, but that clearly sets out the pathway for New South Wales.
You've acknowledged that obviously the parents
Yeah. Yeah. So we've made masks mandatory for all school staff, for high school students. They're highly recommended for kids in Year 3 and above. And I'm very confident the work the Minister has done, consultation with the Teachers Federation. I know from time to time there are different views. I want to thank the teachers for the efforts they've made, particularly in getting vaccinated. There will be some challenges as we go along this path, but those challenges do not outweigh the importance of getting kids back in the classroom. We want our kids back as quickly as possible. We want our kids to be in a safe environment. I have full confidence that that is the case, whilst it won't be without teething issues, and I know it's going to be very difficult to keep masks on young children, so we're going to have a common sense approach to this. The main thing is that we need our kids back there. It's great in terms of their mental health, as we've heard earlier today, but also for their learning, and it's also important for parents who have been going through a very difficult time in balancing work and family life. So tomorrow is a great day for our parents, for our kids, and we believe that we'll be able to open our schools in a very safe way.
Are you considering rapid testing for schools?
We'll always look at different things at points in time based on where health think testing is appropriate. They haven't raised that as an issue, but obviously there's no crystal ball into the challenges that lie ahead. So we have our weekly committee meetings. We'll always be monitoring and looking how things go. Having this first week with just kindergarten, Year 1 and Year 12 and preschools as well. Obviously I want to make that clear. I think that's kind of been lost. Preschool's obviously back in action tomorrow as well. So there'll be learnings along the way. We'll adjust policy settings if we need to. And I'm very confident that schools will open safely. It's a great day for kids. Yeah. 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 I mean, and from time to time, I mean, the relevant ministers come to those committee meetings. Health are working right across the board. There's not just the health acting unilaterally. Health are working with all the areas of government. We've seen that throughout this entire pandemic, whether it's the mental health support that we're seeing today, whether it's working with the Department of Education to make sure we can open schools safely, whether it's working with the Treasury team. This is a whole of...
Sorry, is that a yes or no to the rapid testing?
Well, obviously Education may raise that with our health teams, but we haven't received that final health advice in respect of what they think is appropriate. That would be a major operation right across the state. We've got to do things in an appropriate way. I believe as Premier, from the advice that I've received, that tomorrow we'll be able to open our schools safely. That's what's most important. Health will also provide advice from time to time if schools need to close. We've seen that over this last period of time where schools have been open for certain students. But I approach this day tomorrow with a lot of confidence. I know that there will be some nervous parents, some nervous children, but also a lot of excited kids as well.
Premier, sorry, we're talking about mental health for young people. Now, with masks, they're compulsory for some students and parents, but yet you don't have to wear them in office buildings. Why is there that discrepancy?
Well, obviously in schools, many of our young children are not vaccinated. And that's been the advice that we've received from health. In terms of office settings, for those who are double vaccinated, they can return to the office from tomorrow, without wearing masks in the office. That is a common sense change that ensures that those people who are fully vaccinated are able to return to work. That's an important part of getting the economy moving. We need people coming back into Parramatta. We need people coming back into the Sydney CBD. We want to breathe life back into our cities. It's going to be a long journey ahead, but obviously we weigh all those issues up, Kenny, and the advice that we've received, particularly in terms of the environment of schools, when many of our young children are yet to be vaccinated, that's the appropriate path to take.
And why with primary schools is it left up to primary schools to kind of make their own rules?
Well, because anyone who's got young kids knows how hard it would be to keep a mask on a kindergarten child. So we've got to be realistic here. This is common sense. And there has been, throughout the last 18 months, there's very little consistent about the pandemic. We've got to make sensible, common sense decisions based on the circumstances we find ourselves in. We know in high school that is, we've mandated because that works. What we've said to primary school parents and primary school students is that we highly recommend masks for students who are year 3 and above, but let's just all use common sense here. We want to get through this, we want our schools open safe, and we believe this is the approach. We've worked through that with health and education. We think we've landed it well.
Can I ask you about the award?
Some international writers, what conversations did you have with Were you surprised
No, not really. I mean, the point of the announcement that we made was that we are dispensing with hotel quarantine for those who are coming into Sydney who are fully vaccinated. We want to get returning Australians back, whether you're from New South Wales or from another state. And if you can't get into your other state, you can stay in Sydney and spend some money. That's what we want our economy to soar here in New South Wales, and because of everyone's efforts in relation to the vaccination rate, we're able to do that. In respect to the question on conversations, I've had numerous conversations with the Prime Minister, numerous conversations in relation to moving to this point, and the federal government is supportive. Now, obviously, it's a matter for them in terms of how they stage it, but we certainly want to move it, and we want to move fast, because if we can open up safely in this way, we'll get the New South Wales economy back on top. And why is that important? Because it provides opportunity and prosperity for everyone across New South Wales. We saw the jobs figures that Treasurer Kean spoke about this week. 250,000 jobs have been lost. That's many people out of work. Now, we would have lost 100,000 more but for the financial investment of this government in the job saving program. But there is a long way to go. Now, I have hope and a lot of optimism that New South Wales is going to get back on top, but it makes no sense to me that people who are fully vaccinated should have to sit in a hotel room for 2 weeks. So that change will be coming in on 1 November. Obviously, we look forward to the work the federal government does in relation to its in relation to visas, but we've already got a pathway forward for international students. 500 international students arriving in December. Now, for many people, they say, why are you prioritising international students? Well, we're doing that because it's an important industry for our state. It supports close to 100,000 people. There's about 100,000 people right across New South Wales who rely on that industry to put food on their table and provide for their families. So we will continue to do what we can to open up our state as safely as possible so that we can set up our state for future success. Well, the main thing, obviously, the first and foremost, we want returning Australians to come back home. There are still many, many people from Australia around the world who can't come home. We want people home for Christmas. And that's not just for people from New South Wales, right across Australia. And if we can play a role with that, because everyone across our state has made an enormous effort to get vaccinated, what a great thing that would be for all our Australians. So that's obviously first and foremost a focus for us. But then going forward, we've already got a plan for international students. I would like to increase that plan where we can, and obviously in time for the university year next year. We've had a very close relationship with the university sector, which Minister Lee knows all too well, and working very closely with the universities, we're able to work with them on prioritising those students that come in first in those areas where there's a greater need for face-to-face learning as opposed to remote learning. But this also gives a lot of confidence to international students globally that we have a pathway forward here, and that's what's most important. Whilst we're starting small and we'll leverage up over time, it's giving confidence to people globally that New South Wales is open for business.
And Premier, we're hearing several reports of cases in the Hunter Newcastle region linked to an establishment that isn't checking for vaccine certificates.
Right.
People are checking in and going in. Do you have any, or does your office have any sense of the amount of sort of policing and governance of that sort of behaviour, or any fines handed out?
Well, I don't have those figures in front of me. What I can say is that in the main, everyone is doing a great job. I went shopping yesterday at Castle Towers and people were asking for proof of vaccination, and I know that people were abiding by the restrictions that we have in place, and that's important because we don't want to go backwards, we want to go forward. Now, we know at times not everyone will do the right thing. We know that will happen. But my I urge everyone across the state, as we have the structures in place that we do, to follow them, because it's important. That they're not there for the sake of it, they're there to keep people safe, and we want to keep those case numbers coming down. As we know, as we open up, cases will increase, hospitalisations will increase. This is not going to be an easy time, but I'm confident as a state we'll come together and get through it.
Bronnie, are you concerned at all about the public transport return to school over the next couple of weeks? Is it ready to go?
Yeah, look, this has been raised a number of times. It's been critical in terms of getting kids back into the classroom. We've been working very closely with the Transport Minister's team, and I know education has been front and centre of those discussions to make sure public transport works well as we go back. I know that there will be challenges. We haven't had kids back in the classroom for some time, many months. So there will be some teething issues. I would expect some in public transport, but I know that the public service, the transport team, the education team are focused and committed. We want to do this in the most seamless way possible, but I'm not going to shy away from the fact, I'm sure over the course of the week, and particularly as well, I think the second week, which is when all high school goes back, which is where public transport is more of a challenge. There will be some difficulties, but I think we're ready to go.
With the vaccinations against Premier, is that something that the government's been made aware of? People circulating done those vaccinations appearing to be implemented here.
Yeah, well, that's a serious offence. That's a serious offence. Minister Dominic has spoken about this numerous times with the police minister. To provide fraudulent information is a crime. It is a serious offence. So when brought to the police attention, they will take the appropriate action. But I just remind everybody that that is an offence. And in the main, everyone is doing the right thing.
How's the police and supposed to know that?
Yeah, well, they'll do their best. They'll do their best. What we can't do is we can't have police officers walking through every single shopping centre. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We are taking reasonable and measured approaches here to open safely. We've had to do it with a vaccination certificate because that's the best way and the safest way of opening up. We're the only state that's doing this, and it's going to cause problems at times, and people will do the wrong things at times. But in the main, everyone is doing the right thing, and I want to thank them for that.
What changes the route? Sorry, I'm off. We're hearing some COVID boards have been closed due to demand. Is
Look, I'm not sure on that. I can certainly check that for you. But I know our health team are doing an incredible job. We're obviously below where we thought we would be, but I know there's challenges that are going to come in relation to that. I want to thank our nurses and our doctors, our allied health professionals who are in our hospitals every single day in very challenging circumstances, and there are more challenges that will come our way. They obviously monitor the demand and make those changes, but this will be, we will pivot and have to move as we open up over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, which will be challenging. And we also need to make sure, and we are with the health team, that the resources are available and that we're able to move those resources to where the need is. From time to time, if we can free up capacity in those hospitals and provide other support, we will do that, and that's what the health team and the health ministry are focused on.
The government made a major announcement today in relation to air quality in classrooms as well. Are you confident that you'll be able to rectify all the issues raised in that building before go back in an intervening?
Well, we believe that the measures that we have in place enable kids to go back in a safe way. If there's more that we can do at points in time, we will. Audits are important for government because you can look at where some of those issues are and take action. But we believe, working closely with health and closely with education, that we will have our kids safely back into the classrooms from tomorrow. Now, from time to time, the government will receive advice or things that we can improve, and when we can improve, we will. But I'm very confident. I know there'll be some nervousness, but there's also a lot of excitement about kids going back to school. Many kids haven't seen their friends for a very long time. We're talking about mental health today. and we should spend some more time on that, because this package today is a record investment in mental health support, and it is the untold story of the pandemic. There are many young kids doing it tough, and so this is a balance between, obviously we've got to manage cases, that's exactly what we're doing. We've also got to manage the mental health support for our young children, and getting kids back in the classroom as safely and as quickly as possible is very, very important for them.
On mental health, there's been quite a few references to Western Sydney there in the draft. Is it fair to say
This is
that...
on mental health?
On mental health? Is it fair to say that in some part that's due to the governance of your government based on the harsh policing and double standards when it comes to certain LGAs in Western Sydney?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think a lot of people right across the state know it from time to time. The government has to make decisions to keep people safe, and that's exactly what we've done. And there are always going to be critics from time to time. In a pandemic, you'll say, well, you should have done this, or you're not doing, we disagree with this decision. I've sat in press conferences where half the media pack has said you're going too fast, half the media pack has said you're going too slow. Ultimately, it's the role of governments to sit back, take the health advice, take the economic advice, and make the decisions. And sometimes we're going to get it wrong.
So do you think you got it wrong?
Sometimes we're going to get it wrong. Well, no, I think when you look at the health numbers and look at the vaccination numbers in Western Sydney, Western Sydney has led the charge.
But when looking at the mental health numbers and
mental health doesn't discriminate. There are issues right across the state when it comes to mental health support. I cannot accept the proposition that government making decisions in keeping people safe has any direct impact on mental health. And people are having mental health challenges and issues right across New South Wales right now. That's not a new thing, but the pandemic has caused immense grief to many people, young people, business owners, people who have lost their jobs, not just once but twice. We had 300,000 people last year lose their job, to just get back into work and then to have lost their job again. That's in Western Sydney, that's in regional New South Wales, that's in Eastern Sydney, north to the south. Mental health doesn't discriminate. Many people, particularly young people, are doing it incredibly tough, and we're not going to politicise that. And I think it'd be very unhelpful for people to politicise that based on the government decisions. We have made difficult decisions, like every government has around the world, over the last 18 months to keep people safe. And our people here in New South Wales, have made enormous sacrifices, and many families have suffered. And that's hard. That's hard on political leaders who make these decisions every day, knowing that there are real consequences of the decisions that we make. That's why we don't make those decisions lightly. And I can tell you, as someone who was treasurer, every time we made those decisions, the weight of those decisions I felt very strongly, because these decisions that we made have had enormous impacts. And yes, we focus on the case numbers every single day, but no one's measuring the mental health numbers publicly. No one's talking about that. No one's talking about many young kids who are going through a very emotional and difficult time. I know that with my own kids. I've seen my own kids who haven't gone to school. So whether it's a child in Western Sydney, a child in regional New South Wales, it's not the health orders or the decisions we've made that's discriminated on mental health. No, everyone's gone through a difficult time, and I'm not going to politicise that. And I just say to everyone across the state, please look out for each other, because we can, as I said, we can invest this amount of money. We have done that. But if people look after each other and reach out and recommend services that they think are available to them that would help, well then please do that, because it's everyone looking after each other that's going to get us through it.
So Premier, to be clear, to use your words, you don't think that this tailored to cities is being tailored?
No, not at all. And when I went out in Castula the other day, and I was out with Jeff Lee in Parramatta, there's hope and excitement right across the state. Wherever you go, there is hope, there is excitement. People have gone through a challenging time. Governments make difficult. We made a difficult decision with the Northern Beaches last year. There were families who couldn't get together for Christmas. There is difficult decisions the government has to make at points in time. We made a difficult decision last week in relation to regional travel. We didn't take that one lightly. I know it was unpopular. Worked very closely, and Treasurer Matt Kean was in those meetings. They're not easy decisions. We know people have made bookings to go and see family and friends in regional New South Wales. We know there are people in regional New South Wales whose businesses rely on trade coming in from Sydney. But we've got to make those decisions to keep people safe. We're not. This view that somehow we make these decisions to discriminate is wrong. We make these decisions to keep people safe. We might get them wrong from time to time, but ultimately we'll sit back at the end of this period, and I think, as long as from a leader's perspective and a cabinet's perspective, we're weighing up all the information, we look at the economic advice, we look at the health advice, and we make a call. And from time to time, people are going to be disappointed with the decisions we make, but just rest assured, we're making what we believe are the right decisions to keep people safe, get the economy moving, and get people back into jobs.
We look where the money's flowing, though. We look at West Invest, money being redistributed in terms of stimulus. You see that they are your government.
No, we are acutely aware of our responsibility to look after every single person in this state, regardless where you live. The West Invest Fund arose out of WestConnex. That is a crucial part of our asset recycling program. The Labor Party opposed the construction of WestConnex. If you were in Western Sydney, under Labor, you'd be stuck in a car park on Parramatta Road. That is the difference between the Liberals and the Nationals and the Labor Party. We have built a road so people can get home to their families faster. We provide alternatives to that road so those other roads, those ancillary roads, they also flow faster as well. That provides greater opportunity for people of Western Sydney. Now, when it comes to that West Invest Fund, that was exactly part of our asset recycling program. The Western Sydney is a crucial part of our state. It's the driving room, it's the engine room. The growth of Sydney is in Western Sydney. More and more families are moving to Western Sydney. What governments need to do is to ensure that as areas of our state grow, there is access to the best schools, the best hospitals, the best public transport. That's what we've done since we've come to office, and as Western Sydney continues to grow, we'll do more. Metro West is another public transport program. So wherever we look, we want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve. And Treasurer Kean's from Hornsby. He knows too well, as I did as a kid growing up as a Hills boy, that there was, the Hills grew, that Northwest grew, and there was never the investment in public. The Northwest Metro, which we built when we came to office in Western Sydney, we were straight off the mark in terms of Northwest investment, because that area was growing and there was never any public transport. And the reason the public transport was not built was sadly because of politics. It wasn't looked at where the growth was, because as Kevin Rudd said at the time, we're not allocating any money to that because there's no votes in it for us. Well, that's behind us now. We don't look at electorates as if they're red or blue. We look at electorates and say, here's where the need is, and here's where the investment is going to continue to go. So I remember at the time people said that no one would live in Northwest Sydney, so we're not going to build the M2. Well, we built the M2, we built the WestConnex, we built the Northwest Metro. We're building Metro West. We're building $108 billion of infrastructure over the next 4 years. What we're not going to have is people stand in the way and say it's all too much, because we need to set up our state for generations to come, and the investments we're making will really transform our state, not just for us, but for our kids and their kids. Well, obviously, I can't comment in relation to matters at the ICAC, and I'm certainly, as Premier, not going to give a running commentary. But I can tell you, whilst the media may have an interest, my government is completely focused on the people of our state. And I think if you've seen the work that we've been doing, and particularly the work of Treasurer Kean in relation to the economic recovery plan, which today is a $130 million investment, is key and central to that, and with Minister Taylor, all the ministers of this government have one focus, and that's the people of our state, getting through this pandemic, keeping people safe, opening up businesses and getting people back into work. And yes, the ICAC and all integrity agencies need to do their work. There will be, obviously there's a public inquiry that commences sometime this week, but we're just doing our job and focusing on the people of our state.
Because people are saying with all the changes to the roadmap, they're quite confused about some of the messaging around public employees. For example, on the health website it says dancing is allowed indoors now and not in nightclubs. What do you say to this confusion around messaging?
Bear with us. There's natural confusion from time to time. I get confused from time to time, and I'm making the decisions. So you know, it's not a precise science. I know that. As soon as we lift the restriction here, so there's an inconsistency that arises over there. But what we've tried to do, as much as possible, is make those rules as consistent as we can to provide as much certainty in an uncertain environment. And I think the roadmap provides for that. But if we can make changes along the way when there are anomalies, we will.
Well, hopefully as soon as possible. We want to get people seeing live bands in pubs. We want to get people out to the theatres and going to the cinemas. So this money is being rolled out immediately. It's a big shot in the arm for the arts and cultural sector, and we want to get people back out doing what they love as soon and safely as possible.
So how does it work? Like, how are you getting into the hands of the people in theatre?
Well, we're directly supporting those theatres, those cinema chains, those music venues to get them back engaging music acts and live theatre and all the stuff that we know and love as soon as possible.
Mr. Taylor, so I have a question for you on the mental health.
Thank you. That'd be great.
And the
Yeah.
beds. So where are these beds going to be? And in terms of those, I've forgotten the number, but the training, the rollout of frontline first aid, is that all through Headspace, or is that across various institutions?
Thank you so much for the question on mental health. So there's going to be 275,000 people that will be trained, and that training will be undertaken by Living Works, which is an organisation that has a very long history in doing mental health first aid, suicide prevention, all of those things. So we're going with a really great organisation that's already done a lot of that. Your second question was about beds. So the point that I want to make in terms of mental health as well, and I'm not a doctor, I'm just an old nurse, but it's actually not about those it is about the beds and having those acute beds to make sure that those services are there for when you are possibly having your worst day if you have a mental illness. But what's really important, as we know, and that was what the strategy and what Living Well told us, which was done by the Mental Health Commission, which is independent of government, was that we need to invest in community-based services so that we try, our ultimate gain is to keep people out of those beds when we can. So that's why this investment is so significant for those community organisations, those community groups, training people to have those conversations. Because just imagine if your organisation says, well, we want to do this suicide prevention training for your media organisation. So you're going to go and you're going to do that training, and then you're going to go home and you're going to talk around the dinner table about this great training that you had and what you learned. And then the people around your dinner table are going to go and talk to everyone else, or your child might go and talk, I don't know if you have children, might go and talk about it at school. So you're absolutely increasing that web of being able to have the conversation about mental health. And that's what's so important, because when we have headlines that look at the calls to Lifeline, for example, which have been the highest calls to Lifeline in the history of Australia, but I say to people that's actually a silver lining, because how fantastic is it that people feel they can pick up the phone and have that conversation now? And that's what this is all about as well.
I absolutely commend the frontline health response. There will be those people who require hospitalisation. So where will those be?
Yes, so those beds will be where they need to be, and that's the great thing about this package as well. I wasn't going to go in there and say, right, I want to give X amount here and X amount there. We'll be able to flex up that services by using beds that are available. But I will say to you this, that if you require a hospital admission in New South Wales for an acute exacerbation of your mental health illness, you will get that admission. The people that are working at that level, when that acuity, so that level of the illness and the type of illness that you're suffering on that day, you will absolutely have a bed in New South Wales and you will be treated.
So with Headspace, did you lobby the federal government for extra funding and they didn't come to the table? That's why you
Look, thank you very much for that. I work very closely with the Feds and with Minister Coleman and with Minister Hunt as well. But look, for me, you know, my job is the Minister for Mental Health in New South Wales, right? I care about this stuff. It matters to me. It matters to this government. So the best thing that I can do is what I can do in my patch, and that is approaching the Treasurer, approaching the Premier, saying this is what we need. This is what we need to go and roll ahead. I think out there, you know, people in the community, they don't really they don't really mind if someone's funding it or whoever's funding it. They actually want the service. So for me, I'm just really focused on that, and I look really forward to the Feds coming on board. I think that this is an incredible initiative. I think we're trying something right out of the box here, as Dr. Begona said, in terms of using master students. I mean, that's why I'm so grateful to the Premier as well, because we were able to look at a different model of care, and that's what we're going to do. So I really look forward to them coming on, seeing how fantastic this is, evaluating it and going forward. Yeah.
Are these new boots on the ground working directly with schools, directly with youth organisations where they can be in contact with you?
Absolutely going to be working direct, and that's the thing, right? So we can have all the services that we have in schools, and we've seen a very big increase in those support services in terms of mental health in schools. But the thing is that you can't control the timing of when someone's going to feel that they can talk to you or when that intervention might take place. So that's why it's really important that it's going to be sporting organisations, it's going to be CWA organisations, Rotary. You know, I was out recently with Alan Tongue with Rugby League up in the Upper Hunter, and you know, it was just incredible to be out on this field. It was jolly cold, and they're all doing rugby league training, and they're talking about mental health. Like a whole bunch of blokes playing football talking about mental health, and that's how far we've come, and those are the sorts of people, those are the sorts of organisations that this is aimed at. Thanks for coming.